Okay, right. A very good morning, guys. Can you all let me know if you all can hear me and see your screen? Yes. Can see your screen? Right. Okay, perfect. So today what we need to do is we're going to start with the unit 11 and 12 MCQs. Now, we did not do unit number 7, 8, 9, 10 yet, right? We will have a few extra sessions and get that done because I just did all the current issues and everything with my fast track class last week. I thought of doing 11 and 12 and finishing it off because it's a little fresh in your mind and all of for that purpose. Okay, so we'll start with unit number 11 and 12. The MCQs, maybe the first few MCQs might take a little time, but going forward you will realize that it's the same thing that gets on repeated over and over and over again, right? So given that you realize that, we can then go a little bit faster. Now, some of you all would have actually done the questions and come. Some of you all maybe you all have not learned it in your class or in school or something, so you all would have not attempted. That's okay. So if you can at least learn this unit with me with the question, because I know most of you all are targeting only for the MCQs for unit number 11 and 12. So I'm not going to discuss the essay questions also for unit number 11 and 12 because some of them are outdated, right? Doesn't make sense to kind of study it now. Okay, so we'll start and we'll get going. Okay. Okay. So the unit 11 and 12 MCQs. We'll start with the 2011 paper because I want you all to give me answers as well so that we can, move on quickly so that I know that you all know this question and then I can keep on going. I know it's in the morning, right? Not a usual time that I have a class, but it's not too early in the morning. Okay, so I'm hoping that you all are up and active and can get going. Right. Let's start with question number 43, guys. Question number 43 says, the main driving forces of globalization process are. So what is the driving force of the globalization process? Now, what is globalization? Globalization is where everyone's, kind of getting together. They are interconnected, right? Where international trade has increased, where all of that has happened. So they're asking you, what are the driving forces behind this? Or what are the things that helped bring this whole globalization thing? What do you all think? Technological advances and liberalization policies, bilateral trading agreements and the World Trade Organization, digital revolution and internet, disintegration of the production process, production processes EDI, reduction in shipping costs and protectionist policies of developed countries. What do you all think, guys? Which one do you think helped with globalization? Help with all the countries trading and doing all of that. One thing that I'll definitely tell you guys is the technological advancements. Okay, so one thing that definitely helped with globalization is the technological advancements. Now, for example, think of the communication. Now, see, if you take now companies in US, right? US companies, where are they manufacturing? They are manufacturing it thousands and thousands of kilometers away. They are manufacturing their goods in China, maybe in Thailand, in Vietnam, and then they are again shipping it back to their country. So why do you think all of this was possible? Because of the technological developments, especially in terms of uh, technological advancements, especially in terms of what case? Especially in terms of communication and also transportation. Now, back in the day, communication and transportation were not easy things. Now, with the technological developments that have happened, communication has become easy, transportation has become easy because of these reasons, right? It has definitely driven globalization, right? International trade has increased, right? People depend on other countries, all of that. That's one reason. What do you think the other reason is, guys? The other reason, one is a technological development, definitely. Apart from this, what's the other reason for uh, globalization? Yes, the other reason is trade liberalization. What is trade liberalization? What does this mean? It looks like a very fancy, scary word. What does trade liberalization mean, guys? This is where countries are now open for international trade. Now, remember Sri Lanka, in long time ago, we were not open, right? We were closed economy. And then in 1978, what happened? We started to become a open economy. We started to engage in international trade openly, right? We removed the protectionism, right? Different types of, let's say, import tariffs, the quotas, right? All of those were kind of removed and we opened up. That is what you call trade liberalization. So with more and more countries now engaging in international trade, removing barriers to international trade, what has happened? There has been better and better uh, globalization. So your answer, guys, for 43 is answer number 1. That's the most correct answer. Okay, right. We'll move to 42 then. Okay, this one is an easy one, guys. If you all know the basics, you all can give me an answer. Economic growth occurs when there is what? Even if you know unit number 1, you can give me an answer. When is the economic growth? When there is an increase in the aggregate demand, increase in inflation, increase in wages, increase in employment, increase in productive capacity. When do we have economic growth? The answer, guys, is when there is what? When there is an increase in the productive capacity, or we say when there is an increase in what? The potential output of the country. Now, guys, practically, can we measure the productive output, productive capacity? Can we practically measure how much is Sri Lanka's productive capacity? Is there a way to practically measure that? Can you put a number? Sri Lanka's productive capacity is 1,000, 2,000. There is no way to practically measure it, right? So theoretically, economic growth is where a country's productive capacity has gone up. That means the country is now able to produce more goods. But in practice, how are we going to identify that? How are you going to say that now Sri Lanka can produce more goods? You can't. So therefore, to measure economic growth, now economic growth is the increase in productive capacity, agreed. But how do we measure this then? Because there is no way to measure productive capacity. So how do we measure this? How do you measure economic growth? You look at what? You look at the increase in what? In order to measure this? To measure this, because there is no way that you can find productive capacity. To measure this, what do? We look at the change in what? The change in the real GDP. So we see, if the real GDP from last year to this year has gone up, we say, look here, there is economic growth. That's what we do. So you compare last year's real GDP, you compare it with this year, gone up, right? Economic growth. But remember, actual economic growth means the productive capacity increase in the country now being able to produce more goods and services. So practically, you can't know. How do you measure productive capacity? How can you say that Sri Lanka is able to produce more goods and services now? How can you say that the factor endowment or this one has gone up? You can't. So therefore, to actually measure it, you look at the change in real GDP. Have that in mind. So 44 is number 5, a very easy MCQ. Then we'll go into 46. Okay, this is the 2011 paper. We are starting. Which of the following is most likely to lead to an improvement in the productivity of labor? Even this you can answer with unit number 1 knowledge. What do you all think? Increased supply of labor, less specialization, adopting capital-intensive production methods of production, less division of labor, product differentiation. What do you think can improve the productivity of labor? Now, what is the productivity of labor, guys? Productivity of labor is the total output, right? How do you find productivity? It's the total output divided by the total input, no? So, or you can say the total number of labor units. So you do this you get the productivity. For example, let's say you produce an output of 1,000 units and you used 100 people to do that. So how much is the productivity? Then the productivity is 10. That means per person contributes 10. What is productivity, guys? What is labor productivity or factor productivity? That is one person's contribution. On average, how much does one person contribute? So can you think and tell me, guys, which of this, how can you increase this number? How can you increase this labor productivity? Okay, most of you are giving me answer number 1. Do you think increasing the supply of labor will increase the labor productivity? Do you think increasing the number of labor units, right, increasing more and more people will improve that final answer of number 10? No, right? Just because you have more people, how can you say that the labor productivity is going up? How can you say that, it's gone up? You can't say that, right? Yeah, maybe more people means total output can increase. Correct. I agree with you, right? If there is more and more people in the country, maybe the total output is increasing. But how can you say that the productivity is increasing? How can you say that one person's contribution is increasing? So you can't say that, right? So therefore, number 1 is gone. Then guys, some of y'all also told me number 5. Y'all told me product differentiation. Now, what is product differentiation? Product differentiation is where, you try to differentiate your product from someone else in terms of the color, smell, right? Things like that. Can you tell me, just because we do product differentiation, how is the labor productivity going to go up? For all those who told me number 5, how is it going to go up? Labor productivity is the total output divided by the total number of labor units. That is one person's contribution. That's what you call labor productivity. I don't think you can definitely say that just because a firm or a country has product differentiation, that they have that there is improvement in their labor productivity. And so you can't conclude number 5 also. But the most correct thing that you can say then, guys, is what? Answer number what? Answer number 3. Adopting a capital intensive production technique. Now just think, right? We'll just see, we'll take let's say a small factory earlier. Okay, a factory, let's say earlier was producing 500 units and they were hiring 100 people. Total output was 500, number of labor units was 100. So then how much is their labor productivity? 5. That means one person contributes on average to produce 5 units. So what happens? Let's say they use capital intensive. Let's say they get some technology, some new machines and all. And let's say on one side, their total output now goes from, let's say, 600 to, let's say, 1,000. Now they are using capital intensive, they are using new machines and all of that. Compared to people manually doing it, they've now got a capital intensive production technique. So now output increases. On the same side, their number of labor units will also fall because now they've got more machines and all. So now they don't need that much of manual labor. So the number of labor, right, maybe would have gone down to a 50. When you implement capital intensive production techniques, on one side output increases because newer machines, better technology, right? Output increases. On the same side, your labor falls also because you're using capital intensive. Now, if you look at this now how much is your productivity? Gone to 20. So productivity, which was at 5, went to 20. So that is one way that you can improve labor productivity. So answer number 3. Then this one, guys, has to be the opposite. There has to be more specialization and there has to be more division of labor. So because division of labor and specialization helps with productivity. So the more division of labor and specialization you have, people become faster, lesser mistakes. It makes them more productive. So 2 and 4 are off because they say less. Is that clear, guys? It's a question. A very few of you all gave me the correct answer at first. Okay. Then, guys, we'll go into 46. Right. Question number 46 says, the redistribution of income away from the poorest 10% of the society towards the richest 10% of the society will move the Lorentz curve where? Okay. Now, to do this, guys, I just attached a small picture of the Lorentz curve. Now, most of you all kind of know this. For those who don't know, I'll just quickly summarize what's the story of this Lorentz curve. Okay. So, Lorentz curve, guys, is used to measure, okay, something called income inequality. What is this used to measure? Oh, it's used to measure, we'll say, the income distribution. How has the income in a country been distributed? Has it been distributed equally? Has it been distributed unequally or inequally, right? So in order to do this, we usually have right, we usually have two measures that we talk about. Number one is the Lorentz curve. What's the other one, guys? To measure income inequality, we look at the Lorentz curve. What else do we look at? We also look at what is connected to the Lorentz curve. The Gini coefficient. So you also look at the Gini coefficient. Now remember, guys, even though these are two different things, it's highly connected to each other. So how does this actually work? Now, guys, it's a very easy and a simple story. There are two axes. On one axis, you have the cumulative percentage of income. So that is the country's income. So this is the first 20% of the country's income, the 40%, the 60% of the country's income. On this side, you have the cumulative percentage, right? The cumulative percentage of households. So this gives the total percentage of households ranked from poorest to richest. So the poorest people are the first 20. Now, if you rank the people, let's say there are 100 people, you rank them from the poorest person to the richest person. Okay. So the first 20 will have the really poorer people. Then the last 20 people will have actually the very rich people. That's how you rank it. Then, guys, now just think, if there has to be income equality, or if the income has to be distributed equally, 20% of the country's income, right? Listen, if you all don't know this, 20% of the country's income should go to the first 20% of the population, no? Then you can say, no, income distribution is equal. 40% of the income should go to 40% of the population. 80% of the income should go to 80% of the population. So if that happens, we can say that there is equality, income equality. But then in reality, that is not the story. No? In reality, everyone will not have equal income, guys. To do that only, we have something called the Lorentz curve. Now look at my Lorentz curve. This Lorentz curve is telling that the first 20% of the households are getting only, let's say, around 5% of the total income of the country. The poorest 20% are getting only around 5% of the income of the country. The poorest 40%, they are getting around, let's say, around 15 to 18% of the income, right? The poorest 60%, let's say, they are getting around 30%. So what does that mean? So if 60% is getting around 30%, that means the balance 40% are getting 70% of the income. So what is the Lorentz curve showing us? Lorentz curve is showing us this. This is what you call the Lorentz curve. This line here. This line here is called the Lorentz curve. What is this Lorentz curve showing us, guys? Lorentz curve is showing us how is the income actually distributed. Guys, then if I ask you, okay, now we'll try to connect this a little. The first line that I told you, this is the line of equality. This one is the line of equality. Now, what if the Lorentz curve is over here, guys? Can you all tell me? Now, instead of this big Lorentz curve, what if the Lorentz curve was very closer to this? What can it tell about the line of, what can tell about the income distribution? Is it more equal or has it become more unequal compared to before? If the new Lorentz curve is the one that I just drew, if it's the one that I just drew, income distribution has become more equal, no? So what does that mean? Here, 20% of the population are getting around somewhere around 18% of the income. 40% population are getting around shape, right? It has become more equal than what we have. Then what if the Lorentz curve, right? What if the Lorentz curve goes far away like this, further away? What can you tell about the income distribution? Has it become more equal or has it become unequal? What has happened? If the Lorentz curve is further away, now there is more income inequality, right? It's unequal. It's not being distributed equally. So then how do you read this curve, guys? So you need to know now. This is a highly tested MCQ. So the MCQ says, if the Lorentz curve is closer, right? When I say closer to the line of equality, okay? So if it is closer to the line of equality, you can say the income distribution is more and more equal. Right? There is equal income distribution, not perfectly equal, right? It gets more equal and equal. The closer and closer it goes, the income distribution becomes more and more equal. If it gets further away, right? If the Lorentz curve keeps on moving further away, far and far from the line of perfect distribution, then what can you say? You can say the income distribution becomes unequal. There is more and more inequality in the country. Is that clear, guys? Lorentz curve? Yes. Okay. Right. Then can you look at this question and tell me what would happen? A redistribution of income. I'll come to the Gini coefficient. Okay. Redistribution of income away from the poorest 10% to the richest 10%. So they are taking some money from the poorest 10% and giving it to the richest 10%. What do you think would happen to the income distribution? Would it become more equal or unequal? They're taking some money from the poorest 10%, giving it to the richest 10%. That's what they're saying, redistribution of income away from the poorest 10%. It's going to become more, it's going to become unequal, right? It's going to be unfair, no? They're taking it away from the poorest 10% and giving it to the rich people. So it's going to become more and more unequal. Then can you tell me, guys, what would happen to the Lorentz curve now? Will the Lorentz curve move closer to the 45-degree line? That's the perfect distribution line. Or will it move further away from this? What's going to happen? It's happened. This one is becoming more and more unequal. That means Lorentz curve is going to move further away. So we can cut off what? We can cut off answer number 1 that says it will move closer, answer number 2, and answer number 5 that says it's on the 45 degree. So it's either 3 or 4 now. We realize Lorentz curve is moving further away. Okay, now we'll come to our second concept. The second thing is what we call the Gini coefficient. The Gini coefficient also, guys, is connected to the Lorentz curve. You know, how do you find Gini coefficient? Gini coefficient is a small calculation to do. Now, can you see in this diagram, there is an area of A and B. Okay, so Gini coefficient, you know how you calculate this? Gini coefficient is, it's the area of A divided by the area of A plus B. So A divided by A plus B. That means A plus B is the entire triangle. A is that Lorentz curve and above part. So now think, guys, practically think. If the Lorentz curve, right, is very close to this, okay, very close to the line of equality. Let's say this area is 10, this big area is 90. A is 10, B is 90. Now, my new Lorentz curve. Then how much is my Gini coefficient? My Gini coefficient will be 10 divided by 10 plus 90, no? 10 divided by 10 plus 90. So that's going to be how much? That's going to be a 0.1. So what did you learn, guys? We learned that when the Lorentz curve is closer to the line of equality, right? Income distribution is more equal. And income distribution is more equal. And along with this, what can you also say? Right? The Gini coefficient, right? I'll just say GC since I don't have space here, right? Gini coefficient takes a lower value. takes a lower value. Then look at the other side. What if, right? What if my Lorentz curve was something like this, a B curve like that? Then maybe the area of this is, let's say, 70. Area of A. Area of B is 30. Then how much is my Gini coefficient? Then it will be 70 divided by 70 plus 30. That would be 0.7. So what happens, guys? Gini coefficient ranges from 0 to 1. If the Gini coefficient is 0 means perfect equality. Like income has been distributed perfectly equally. How can you get 0? That is if the Lorentz curve is on the line of equality, no? So then 0 divided by, let's say this area is 100. Then only you get 0. Now, if the Gini coefficient is 1, that means there is what? Perfect inequality. So remember, Gini coefficient can range from 0 to 1. 0 means more and more equal. Going towards 1 means more and more unequal. So remember, it's connected to the Lorentz curve, right? So based on where the Lorentz curve is only, you calculate the areas. That's why it's this. Can you draw the Lorentz curve bowed outward? You can. Then you have to change the axes. So you have to, for example, it usually will not be bowed outwards, but sometimes in some textbooks it's there. If it's bowed outward like this, then this side only will become the axis, right? While having the axis bottom over here, it will never be bowed outward, because we are ranking them from the poorest to the richest. No? So there is no way that the poorest 20% has 40% of the income. Practically, that can't happen, because you're ranking the people from the poorest people to the richest people. You're not just taking 100 people. When you're getting the cumulative percentage of households, you're getting the poorest to richest. So poorest 20% can no way be having more money than the richest 20%. So therefore, that will never happen. It will not bow that way like that, unless you change the axes and okay, right. Then, okay, where were we? Okay, so what can we say, guys? Now, further away means the Gini coefficient is increasing. Now, what can you say about this, guys? Now, more and more, there is more and more inequality here. What will happen to the Gini coefficient? Gini coefficient ranges between 0 to 1. 0 means there is more and more equality. 1 means more and more unequal. What can you say? Gini coefficient increases, right? Keeps on going up and up and up. So this is a very common question that comes in your paper. That's why I took some time to explain it with a diagram. Now the other questions to come, I will not be taking this much of time. Okay. Is that okay, guys? Fine. Gini coefficient and the basic story. Okay. Okay. Then we'll go to the next one. The unemployment rate. Now, this is also a very common question, guys. A question from labor force, unemployment, employment. Okay. So, is the number of people unemployed as a percentage of what? That is what they're asking. So, how does this labor story work? Let me quickly show you. Okay. So, this labor story works this way, guys. Let's say you have the Sri Lanka's total population. Listen very carefully, yeah? Let's say Sri Lanka's total population, we have, let's say, 20 million. From this 20 million, we remove the small children and the old people, because they are not in the working age. No? So if you remove, right, the small children below 15 or below 10, that depends on the country, right? Remove the children and the old people. Let's say Sri Lanka has 3 million children, 2 million old people, let's say. So total, if you remove this 5 million, what do you get, guys? What is this called? From the population, if you remove the small kids, this is called the working age population. So this is what you call the working age population. So let's say in my example, it's 50. Now, guys, in the working age population, does everyone in the working age population work? No, right? Now, for example, y'all are in the working age population. Are y'all working? No, you're a full-time students. Maybe some of your mothers, right? Are they working? No, they're housewives. They're looking after the kids and they're looking after the house. Then uh, maybe there are some people who are self-employed. They don't want to work. They have their father's business. They do that. Sometimes they go, sometimes they do. Then there are the people who are voluntarily idle. There are some people who are very rich. They have generational wealth, right? They don't have to go to work. So, there are people like that. So those people are whom we call the economically inactive people. So who are the economically inactive? Now, I'm not going to write each one of these guys. You all can, if you all don't know, you all can write. The economically inactive people are full-time students, housewives, the self-employed people, the voluntarily idle people. So let's say there is around uh, let's say around 6 million of Sri Lankan people are economically inactive. So then guys, from the working age population, if I deduct the economically inactive people, what do I end up with? What do I get now? Now I get something called what? Now I get the labor force. Can you give me another name for labor force? Now I get the labor force. This is also called what, guys? This is also called the economically active population. Economically, right? I'll just say E, economically active population. So then guys, how much is my economically active population? According to my example, I have how much? 15 minus 6. I have a 9 million of economically active. Now my question is, from these economically active people, does all of them have jobs? Does all of them have jobs? Is all of them employed? No, right? Economically active means they are either having jobs or they are either looking for work. So not everyone has jobs, no? So from this economically active, okay, from this economically active population, some of them are employed. That means some of them actually have jobs, okay? Some of them don't have jobs. They are looking for jobs, but they don't have jobs yet. So those people are whom we call unemployed. So this is how the story is broken down. So from these three, right, from this story, there are very few, very common MCQs that they ask. So what are the MCQs that they ask? Number one, they ask the labor force participation rate, LFPR. They are asking how many of people are participating in the labor force. How do you work this? Labor force participation rate means out of your working age population, right, from your working age population, how many are there in your labor force, right? So it's labor force over working age population into 100. So connect to my example and take the numbers. In my example, there is a labor force of 9. Out of how many people? Now, you can't take it out of the whole population. Not fair, no? So there is a working age population of 15 in my example. From that 15 million, 9 million are in the labor force. So 9 million are participating in the labor force. That's what you call the labor force participation rate, LFPR. So how many are participating? According to my example, 60% are participating. Then that is one calculation. Another calculation that they ask you guys is they also ask you this, guys, the unemployment and the employment rate. How do you calculate unemployment rate? Unemployment or even employment, they ask you this. So this is the number of people who are unemployed divided by what, guys? Divided by the total population, divided by the working age population, or divided by the labor force? Divided by the labor force. Remember that. So think in my example, I have not given numbers. Let's say from this 9, let's say 6 people are employed 3 people are unemployed. Okay. So how much is my unemployment rate? There are 3 million unemployed into 100. Okay. You get a percentage. 3 are unemployed. My labor force is a total of 9 people. So 3 over 9 into 100, I get a 33%, 0.3% of an unemployment rate. Then what's the final calculation that they can ask you from this? What's the final calculation? They can also ask you for the employment rate. Now this is very easy, guys. If 33% is unemployed, the balance is employed. That means 66.7% are employed. But how do you find it? It's the number of people employed divided by the labor force into 100. So according to my example, 6 people are employed, labor force is 9. 6 over 9 into 100 is 66.7. So this flow and these 3 calculations you all have to know, because it's a very common MCQ almost every year. So I will show you the questions. So now we are going to learn the first one. Now, first one is not even a calculation. They're just asking for like a definition. The unemployment rate is the number of people unemployed as a percentage of what? It's the number of people unemployed as a percentage of the labor force. So can you see which answer talks about the labor force? Number of people unemployed as a percentage of the total population minus students, a number of people who are employed, a number of people who are employed and looking for employment, working age, or the population. It's the number of people unemployed as a percentage of what? As a percentage of the labor force. So labor force means what, guys? Labor force is not the population, right? Labor force is the people who are employed and the people who are unemployed. Unemployed means they're looking for work, right? So it's answer number 3. That answer only talks about your labor force, no? Here the people who are employed, in my example, 3 million. And then unemployed are the, employed is the 6 million. 3 million is the what? Answer numbers are interchanged. I don't know. Check in your past paper, but the wording has to be this: number of people who are employed and looking for employment. In the past paper, it's answer 5. In the past paper, is this answer the 5th one? Have I like jumbled and typed it? I don't know. I have jumbled and typed. Okay, so you can figure this out now. Okay, so past paper answer is also correct. So that's 5 because this answer is the 5th answer. So I have typed it into this. Okay, right. Is that fine, guys? Are all okay? You need to know the flow. You need to know the 3 calculations. Very common question in your paper. Now, since these are the first time only I'm taking through. Now, later on papers, when we see this question, I will say refer 2011 question 47. Okay. Then we'll come to 48. 3 main deprivations reflected in the multidimensional poverty index. Now, even in my theory tute, I didn't talk much about a multidimensional poverty index. I spoke about a human development index. So you all can take a screenshot of this case. Okay. The multidimensional poverty index, right? It's a method to calculate poverty. Right now, like you have the human development index to calculate development. So just like that, to calculate poverty, there is an index called the multidimensional poverty index. So this multidimensional means what? Multidimensional means it looks at different dimensions, not just income. So it looks at what? It looks at the health of the country. It looks at the education, and also it looks at the standard of living. You will say, sir, health, education, standard of living. So this is the human development index. Multi-dimensional poverty also, the main 3 dimensions are the same. But even though the main 3 dimensions are the same, the indicators are different. Remember, in human development, how did we look at health? We looked at the life expectancy at birth, no? How long do people live? That's what you looked at. But here, in multidimensional, when you look at health, you know what you look at? you look at nutrition, and you look at child mortality. So what is child mortality? Usually child mortality is given out of 1,000. So if someone says child mortality rate in Sri Lanka is 20, what does that mean? Someone said, okay, child mortality is 20. What does that mean? That means, guys, out of 1,000 children who are born, 20 people die before the age of 1. That is what you call the child mortality rate. Child, now 20 doesn't mean 20%, not out of 100, right? These are given out of 1,000. So out of 1,000 people born, if someone says, right, if the question says child mortality rate is 30, what does that mean? Out of 1,000 people who are born, 30 die before the age of 1. Right? How many children die before reaching the age of 1? Now, child of mortality rate is high. Child mortality rate is high means, that means the healthcare in the country is bad, no? So maybe they are not delivering the baby properly. Maybe they don't have the enough nutrition to give the small kid. Like maybe those are the reasons. So that also helps with identifying poverty. Okay, that's the story there. Then guys, they also look at education. How do these guys look at education? They look at the years in schooling and the school attendance. So how many years does a normal person go to school, and do they regularly attend school? Now, some of you all, right, maybe not you all, but you all know some children, they are registered in a school, but they don't go to school. Not that they don't go to school, not that they don't have attendance because they are lazy to go, because the parents don't have the money to send them to school, guys. Maybe that could be the reason. Maybe, they can't afford, let's say, I don't know, textbooks, or not textbooks, let's say a school bag, let's say uniform, let's say food for the child, right? They can't afford. So because that reason, the school attendance is really bad. Children don't go to school. So that is how they look at education. Another index dimension of the multidimensional poverty index. Then also, guys, the standard of living. Now, in the Human Development Index, how do you look at standard of living? The GNI per capita, no? Adjusted for purchasing power parity. So here, how do you look at the standard of living, guys? You look at, do you at least have cooking fuel, right? At least, let's say kerosene, no LPG gas, so whatever. At least you have some fuel to cook. Do you have basic sanitation? Let's say a proper toilet facility, right? A drainage facility for your water to go, right? You have those, okay? Then do you have drinking water? That's how they look at standard of living. So this is the multidimensional poverty index, which is used to measure poverty in a country. So have a basic, they look at electricity, housing, and also the assets, right? Do you have a TV? Do you have a basic fridge, right? They look at assets like that. So this is the multidimensional poverty index. So remember, the broader dimensions are the same as the Human Development Index. Human Development Index also looks at health, education, standard of living, but the indicators are different. Human Development Index health, they look at the life expectancy. How long do you live? In multidimensional, when they look at health, they look at nutrition and child mortality. So likewise, take some time to go through. You all can even take a screenshot if you want. I'll have my camera off as my ugly face is also on your screenshot now, right? So this is the multidimensional poverty index. Okay. Then, right. We'll go back to the question now. Okay. Can you tell me, guys, the three main deprivations, that means the three main dimensions reflected in the multidimensional poverty index are what? It's a very direct question here. Which one is the three that we talked about? Health, education, and standard of living. Right? That's what we showed. Okay, so this is the picture, guys. Okay. Right. Final two questions. Question number 49. Okay, so this is out of syllabus, not really relevant for now. Remember, questions like this can come, right? Whatever that is happening in that year, they can put in your MCQ page. So here they are asking, according to Mahinda Chintana, development policy framework, right? When Mahinda became president, Sri Lanka is expected to double its per capita income in 2060. Same thing what Gota also said, right? What is the expected level of investment to achieve this target? I'm also not very sure. It's probably a very unrealistic this thing. Maybe around, you can just check the past paper because I also don't know the exact number as to how much, but it's not relevant, right? Don't have to study, don't worry, right? You can cut it off. Then we'll go to 50. The official poverty line in Sri Lanka is based on what? What is the official poverty line? Official poverty line means, so there is a line, whoever who is earning below this poverty line, they are in poverty, right? That means they are poor, they can't satisfy their basic needs. Can someone tell me how much was this number as at December 2022? December 2022, this was a 13,777. That means if a person is earning, this is one person now, right? For one person, that means if there is a family of 3, you have to multiply this by 3. So if they are earning less than 13,777, that means they are in poverty. So this is the what? This is the poverty index. Is that okay? Fine. So poverty line. Anyone below this? Yes, per month. Per month if they are earning. So how do they come to this number? That's what they're asking, right? Is based on what? This 13,777 is based on what? What do they look at? So they look at, guys, the minimum amount of food that you need to get your basic nutrition. So there is an amount of kilocalories that you have to get per day. To get that amount of kilocalories, how much should you spend on food and also on your essential non-food consumption, right? So maybe like gas, maybe like, your clothes, maybe, right? So for that, how much do you have to spend? So which one? Answer number 5, guys. The real per capita food, per capita means per person, okay, food and non-food consumption expenditure per month. So one person's food and non-food expenditure is what you look at. So minimum you need 13,777. So imagine how many people might be in poverty, right? Now this looks like a middle class family, guys. Just think 13,777. If you're in a family of 4, right, multiply this by 4. How much do you get? Around 52, 50, around close to around 54,000. Yeah, so that means a family of 4 must be earning 55,000. Okay, we'll say 55,108. So that means a family of 4 must be earning close to 55,000. So if a family of 4, now just think of your family, guys. If your family of 4 people and your income, total income, maybe father's income, some rent or some profit from somewhere, the total income is less than 55,000. That means even y'all are in poverty. That means even y'all are not able to satisfy one of your basic human needs. Maybe y'all are eating less, right? Maybe y'all are, some other side it's deprived. Okay, maybe y'all are skipping, let's say, a meal, right? Not having breakfast, directly having lunch, maybe things like that. So just think, as 55,000 looks like a big amount. It looks like, a normal middle class family now. But anyone below 55,000 as of December 2022, a family of 4, this is, right? If they're not earning that, that means they are in poverty. Not easy. Okay, right. So that's question number 50. Okay, so how did you all do so far? Out of how many questions? There were 40, how much? 8 questions. How much out of 8? First question, 43 was answer number 1, 44 was answer number 5, 45 was answer number 3. Someone asked me for the answers. Okay, 7, 8, at least 5 out of the 8 questions. To mark, you have to do the questions. No matter. Okay, right, that is there. Okay, so 2011 is kind of done. Okay, right, so I'll end the recording